Into either of these, you have to make something or cut them by hand. But these are the two sizes we got. I realized I turned some random lines and realized that I needed to add a spacer to this, but you can pull these out whenever you want. It's not glued on there, this strip of plywood, so pull that out and make it happen. But that's so this one's for bigger columns, this one's for a little bit smaller. The point is it needs to be able to sit in there, and you need to be able to totally be flat across. You can't have this projecting above. That defeats the whole purpose of sliding a router on top of that. The jigs themselves, we put them on these platforms here. They're screwed from the bottom, so we can clamp it down to any sort of work surface, tabletop. It's just a way to get it down. So before, we used to have a cleat on the bottom of these, so it wasn't this big flat piece of plywood. It was a cleat that you could lock into a vise or something. Like if you had a bench in your own shop, like the ones we use upstairs, you'd lock it in right there and be able to route. That's a great clamp to use. But we don't use the router upstairs, so we had to do something else different. Besides that, it's just plywood laminated together with with a pin nailer and some glue. There is a V channel on the inside of there with 3 pieces of plywood stacked. The point of this is that hopefully you can look at this jig and realize, oh, if I want to make something bigger, a bigger column, a turned center column for like a dining table, you could just make this thing bigger and fit that column in there as long as you have something flat to write a router on and do sliding dovetails that are much larger. If you're going to do something like that, instead of just holding it down we're going to hold this down with one clamp. If you needed like a lot more force to hold this thing down, what you could do is, do you guys see these little Sharpie marks? Those 4 Sharpie marks inside of there? And what you could do is before you glue these walls together, those Sharpie marks represent where I would go to the bandsaw and sort of cut an absence of material out. Then when I clamp this somewhere, I have a hole that goes through here. I could put some straps through there and like a ratchet strap it down to the jig itself. So it's a really secure way of something really big and round to just lock it down. Okay? So that's the jig. Then I'm at the point where my legs are cut out. I have bandsaw marks everywhere where I'm going to shape. I've already cut out a clean 90-degree edge with a table saw on all 3 of my legs or all 9 of my legs, whatever I'm doing. And it's nice and consistent and even, right? So I'm going to fit this dovetail before I do any rest of my shaping on my legs or on my column. Okay, so at the column I have my dumbbell looking thing where I have my widest diameter at the top and bottom. Even on the finished piece, my widest diameter is only going to be down here. I just have equal wide diameters here. And then this is where my joinery is, and that is finished. That's sanded, that is done, that's to final dimension. I'm totally done with it. That's why I'm here right now. I also noted the length of how long I need this joinery area to be is how sort of tall my leg is. That's going to change. That's going to be different for each of you. So how deep I need to put this dovetail in. And you can see here that if I slide this in, I just have a little bit of column exposed on the bottom, and that's okay. I can always chop that off, shape it. Even if you have, let's say I turn this in my leg, was hitting the shoulder right here, again, okay, I would just shape that leg. Maybe it scoops down this way. Maybe I just have a more severe arch. But the point is it shouldn't be grossly out of, they should be pretty close to each other, whether it's a little high or a little low. And I took some time to, I sanded the top and bottom. You don't necessarily need to. It's all a rough turning, really, but this, for demo, is my final piece. Before I lock it in to the jig, I need to put 3 marks 120 degrees away from each other. Now, how am I going to do that? Do you do a bunch of math? I don't. I can take my pair of dividers and I can pick where I want sliding mortise, dovetail mortise first. Where I would pick that is if I'm looking at my turning. This looks like pretty clean wood, but let's say for some reason, you know, there's a pin knot here that I want to get rid of. I know that I'm creating 3 channels through this. I could get rid of that little guy, so I know everything's going to look good. If I want to do that, the way this jig works is that wherever I put a mark on here, let's say I'm going to put the mark right there. That's where one of my, one of my indicators for stepping 120 degrees away. I line that up with this pencil line in the front right here. Everyone see that? Who wants to take a look at it? It's a pencil line right here that travels right at the bottom of that bead. Okay? And I'm going to put that pencil line that I just established, you know, right in line with that. So I know that's where I want to travel. And where I'm actually dovetailing is opposite of that mark. Okay, so I have to go to the other side. So if I have a pin knot here, I'm putting a pencil line on the opposite side. Okay, so I'll start here. Now I'll take a pair of dividers and I'll put it to the edge. And I'll go, here's my 1, 2, 3, and you go back to 1. Oh, look at that, just like yesterday. Weird. So there's going to be trial and error with that, but just take the time to find, you know, right where you want it, and don't press really hard because the grain's running up and down. You'll split those fibers. You don't necessarily want to do that. If you don't like this operation, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, and back to 3. I split it into 3 equal parts. You could also take a piece of paper, start it somewhere, and right where it overlaps, I'll put a pencil line, right? And then I can measure that out and divide it into thirds. And I can put my, you know, imagine that's broken up into thirds. And you can use your dividers there too, yeah. Same, you could use your dividers on a piece of paper. Or you can measure and be like, that's too complicated, I'm in 64ths, use your dividers. But then you can put 3 marks on a piece of paper and kind of turn that piece of paper and say, oh, those would be nice there, right? And knowing that, remember, wherever you put the pencil line, you're actually routing opposite of that pencil line in the jig. Okay? So that's another way to do it. I'll just do it with the dividers. I'll start on the pencil line here. Little dimple. Those other 2 spots on the back to the original. And turning, you know, in the instructions I say add an extra inch, which I still think is a good idea just for mass and safety, and you don't necessarily need to. But when you're thinking about where you want, excuse me, where you want your dovetails to go, on this first example I did, I was using the drive center, that bigger spur that you guys learned on, and I got, you know, you can only go down, I can't sort of remove material where the spur is making contact with wood. So I have a limited diameter I can hit. I actually wanted to make this dovetail go a little deeper, but I couldn't, right? Because I had it on the drive center side where the motor is. And you guys learned on these ones, but we also have these available. It's a little smaller. And is there a reason why? Did Luke say anything about this?
He said he wanted a positive bite. He didn't want us to use the beginner ones.
Right. So I don't. I use these all the time for a couple reasons. One is that I'm turning 5/8 tenons for chairs, and I can get right to 5/8 on this. I can't with that. I would have to make my rungs a little longer. I don't want to do that. The whole process is cutting right to length. 2, these have they're like spring loaded, and so you can have the motor running, and I can set this in to that dimple, right? And then wind my tailstock up to my other center point, and then the motor grabs the piece and then starts spinning real good. And then I start sizing, because I do, Windsor chair guys, you guys are gonna make your tenons upstairs with a drill. You're gonna use this thing called a tenon cutter. When I'm doing Windsors, I'm doing all my tenons on the lathe, right? I just bring it down with calipers, so I'll get it close, turn it on there, try and fit it, bring it back to the lathe. So the lathe is running the whole time, and it's really fast and really clean. So, you know, that's the benefit of this. Smaller, and you can take it on and off. This one, you gotta have it hook back into those, where it grabbed on those 4 spots. Okay?
I'm saying the lathe is running the whole time while you're taking the piece in and out.
Correct.
Oh.
Yes. So that's what's going on. So if you are using the drive center, the spur, the bigger one, you need to think about, you know, where your joinery is. Maybe it's better to turn your joinery on the tail side of the lathe, right? So then I'm not interfering with any of that here. Okay? Which is exactly what I did on these samples. So this one is where I was grabbing near the motor side, and over here, where my joinery is, I had on the tail side. Okay. Now I got my 3 indexes. I'm just going to start on one of them, and I'm going to bring it right to the edge here. And now where the joinery is, it's floating, right? I want it to be making contact with my widest points. The reason I don't make it wide all the way across is because when I clamp it down in the jig, we're going to use this thing, and it's just another V-groove with some cork on it, and so we don't mar our material. The grain is running in this orientation. You can set that right in there, and when I put some pressure, clamping pressure on there, it's going to distribute that pressure equally in those 2 high points. So I don't risk I don't have any slight wobble in there, anything like that. Just less room for error, basically. And so that's in there. So now everything's locked in really good. And use these F-clamps. These are better than the quick grip ones for this kind of operation. And I'm on my index, I'm good. What I want to do next is take a square, and it's loose. I have it riding on one side of the flat. Your 12-inch Starrett would work for this too. And so I'm making contact with my joinery zone, and I'm just gonna come up this way. And what I see is that I'm ever so slightly lifting up like this, which means it's getting a little wider here. So if I go, let me show you if I can. It's subtle, but if I lock in, I loosened it again and made contact with this point. When I bring it back, there's just a little bit of a gap back there. I really want that to be as clean as possible. So if that's the case and you don't want to, you could go back to the lathe now and fix that. If you're afraid, like it's so subtle, it's just a little, like it's just a moose here.
What size?
You can take, so I grab some 180 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to tuck it in the back, right? I'm lifting the back up just a little bit so I can get, and I'm guessing that I need a full 180 grit sandpaper. I have a feeling it's going to work.
Almost like you've done it before.
On the index again. And you'll probably need to do that every time, right? That's not going to change. That diameter is not going to change as you spin it 120 degrees. So remember that. Put it in. Good. Again. That feels way better. That's all I really had to do, okay? So, I'm happy with where that's at. I'm making sure everything's good. So now I'm ready to route my flat. So I first need a flat before I can measure down from that flat to know how deep I want my dovetail to go. And so we have two routers. Do you need two routers? No. Is it nice to have two routers? Yes. So the point of this first router is to have a base on that router that's big enough to, comfortably make contact with your jig on all sides. So let's say you only have a palm router at home, like the little ones you guys do with, the little Bosch ones. You can put a bigger plastic base on there, stick it on, whatever, and it would do the same thing. There is a very large dovetail bit inside of here, but that's not what we're dovetailing with. This dovetail bit is really good at shearing wood clean. It's also it's just resharpened, it's brand new, it's great. So what we need to do is create a flat, and you say, okay, I'll just put a nice straight cutter in there, like a upcut spiral bit. And upcut spiral bits are great, but they pull the fibers up. So you're gonna get those little feathery hairs coming up, and you want something nice and clean as possible. It's a subtle thing, but it's good. And so better than those two fluted straight cutters or this is another dovetail bit because of the angle of the dovetail coming down on that material. It has a shearing quality that's just really slicing through on something round. So again, this is your last option. Second best would be a straight cutter, a two fluted straight cutter bit, and the number one is another dovetail bit. Okay. And with this router, it's not plugged in yet, and let's not plug it in yet. My birthday boy. Right now I can't move it, right? I sort of pull that trigger. Now I can move that up and down, and when I plunge that and then let go of this, it stays right where it is. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. And if I loosen that, it pops back out. So that is how this one works. This was the best plunge router until Festool made theirs. Porta-cables are great. So what I need to do, and then I'm going to talk about this knob in a second, that's also going to be helpful. I want to bring this to my material, find the widest point of the cut, and you can really quickly take too much off. Remember, the flat that I'm establishing is dictated by how thick my leg stock is. And my leg material is about 5/8 thick. I have a nice, clean, dainty leg. I'll round it over. And so I only need a flat that's just wider than 5/8. 1/16, an 1/8 is okay. Really heavier than an 1/8, it's overkill. But it does need to be wider than whatever your leg stock is. That's the whole point of having a nice, clean looking shoulder. And I don't know how deep this is, or I could try to figure out all this math, but I'm just gonna sneak up to it. Because once I figure it out, I'm gonna lock it in the router, so I can do that to all three, and it'll be exactly the same. So I'm gonna bring this to my piece, bring this down, and when I'm just making contact, and people can look if they want, where I'm at right now with this. I'm just sort of seeing where the cutter's coming in on both sides. See how I'm like, okay, it's just gonna cut there. It's just gonna cut there. Let me know if I gotta move or anything. I'm just kind of seeing where it's gonna bring itself off. And if I bring this down another 30 seconds, it's gonna make a way wider plane. So it's a really subtle movement. Here, I'm gonna bring these down. I have it locked, so it's, it's protruding out of there. Make sure you bring both down. So now that's locked, and if I let go of this, it can't go up anymore, right? So, dummy proof, okay? So So now I can keep it there, tilt it to the side. Now, plug it in. Russell?
I got it.
Russell?
I got it.
Moment has passed.
It's a birthday, come on.
And to turn it on, there's a little switch right here. Flick it on. Little switch. I'll make sure I'm not making contact with any wood. Sneak up to it, and I'm going to sort of cut on one side, bring myself to the other side, cut, and then what if I have anything left over in the middle, then I'll get it. The other thing is that I could just keep plowing through. I could just keep going if I wanted and go right into that shoulder that I just worked really hard on at the lathe. Well, don't do that. And just focus on your cut here. If you really wanted to, you could double stick tape like a piece of wood so you have a positive stop. But if you're just making one or two tables, just pay attention. Just don't go past the shoulder. Don't do it. That's my advice. So what happens usually is people are making 2 or 3 tables, and it's on the 3rd table that they start thinking about lunch or something else, or how they want to shape their, go back to the lathe and shape their column, and they start just plowing right through. And there's a fix for it, but we can avoid it. Just each time pay attention. Here we go. So, I have a flat established. I'm still just below my shoulder there, so I just stayed away. I'm just going to do some chisel work later. That's just so I can be as brave as you would like to be. And I'll take reality right here. This is my leg. And I'll see, am I on the money? Am I a little under? And I'm fractionally under, maybe 64th from where I need to be. And I actually need to be of being exactly to my leg. I need to be a little wider than my leg. So I need to bring that bit down just a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll loosen this, spin this. That's probably too much. And like a little turn does a lot when you're this close, okay? And I can kind of feel that I'm gonna make a cut. And if you really were worried about this, you could turn a practice column that's the same length, and then you could get all your settings here. But I think if you just sneak up, you'll be okay. So, yeah. Ooh, yeah. So now you can see just beyond there by a hair. That's good. That's where you want to be. Even if it was a 16th or a heavy 16th on both sides, you'll be okay. It's still going to look so clean, I promise. Because all you're going to do is, once everything's together, you're just going to gently break that edge where it goes round to flat. No one will ever see it. There's enough movement and where that piece sits, you'll just never actually see that going on. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is set up the other router and run my dovetail. I'm not going to undo this. There's no way I'll be able to find this flat plane again, exactly where it is. So you have to run your dovetail now, then I'll move to the next one. But this one's set up. All I have to do is plug it in, run it, and move on. So this first one is the longest one it's gonna take.
On that initial cut, you dropped it down. Now you're just going by eye, because you didn't like trace out your 5/8 leg on there.
Yeah, I'm just sneaking up, and then I'm bringing this knob down slowly. And
Yeah.
so, another quarter turn. I did 2 quarter turns, and I was under, then I did 2 quarter turns, and I'm just over. So it's really subtle. Okay. So let's unplug that. Now we got that. The Festool pig. And this is new this year. Very exciting new thing. And so what this usually is most people are buying this from Festool as just this. It's an edge guide. They sell them, it's not a pair, you buy one. And the beauty of this is that you can go against an edge and run a rabbet or a groove, or sliding door panel grooves, and you can slide this along a flat surface, so you can utilize this on your case piece all day. Doing double tenons on a piece, there's a lot of clever ways to get that going, but we realized if we get 2 of these, we can sandwich it together, and now the router has nowhere to go. We used to use like a big piece of plastic and a bunch of double stick tape, and like it worked, but this is
A little more
a little bit better. Oh god. The way I'm gonna prep this is I have them both on here floating. You lock them in with these knobs over here, these guys. I'm gonna, I generally have the router where I want it, close enough that's not important quite yet. I do have it resting mostly on the piece, so I'm not out here. I'm here. I'm gonna bring one edge tight to a wall, lock this in, bring the other edge to the wall while I'm making sure this stays tight to that wall. And there we go, right? Now I'm riding clean inside of it. So that's great. But how do I make sure my dovetail bit is centered for where I want to route into my column? Well, I'm going to loosen this knob right here on the router bit itself. And now I can move that around while these stay sandwiched between the jig. So that's how we're going to navigate it. I'll bring it back a little bit and loosen all this stuff. Now I have as a reminder, I have the 1/2-inch dovetail bit inside of there, the one that we have 4 of. We have 4 of these bits, which means the maximum cutting depth is a 1/2 inch. Can't go any deeper than that. And the maximum width of that cutter, so the widest point to widest point, is also a 1/2 inch. If you have a really big leg, like if you're kind of doing like a carved leg, right, Russ? Like something like that. You either want to go, if you can, a little deeper, right? So the maximum depth of this dovetail bit is, I think, 13/16. So you can go deeper into your column, which means more glue surface, more long grain to long grain, all that. Or you might even, if it's a really big, really wide leg, you might need to use something like this. Like that might be, the point is your leg material needs to be wider than whatever the widest point of your dovetail bit is. That's the important part. Okay? So I got the 1/2 inch here. I'm going to go about 1/2 inch, 7/16 deep, so almost using the full cutter. And I'm going to find the widest point of the cutter here. Bring it down. So I need to set off that flat. I need to make a pencil mark about how deep I want to go so I can set the route bit. So from here, let's do just under a 1/2 inch, somewhere between 7/16 and a 1/2. I mean, it's not crucial. I just need to hit that pencil line. So. And you only need to do that once, because again, once we set this up, we keep it locked. So everything's nice and loose. I'm going to come here, hit that pencil line, lock it in. And if you want, you can lock that turret in so you don't go any lower, right? The plunge depth turret. And so now those are both locked in. Now, I still need to center my bit. And I could take all day and try and be right on the money and measure from point to point, but I have this round piece and I have this jig and there's these walls in the way, and really the truth is that there's some leeway to this. And because I made that flat a little wider, if I'm a little to my left or right of my center, I'll be okay. So just, here's where you gotta trust your eye and just find center and go for it. But again, I'm sort of committing for all of this. I'm gonna lock this in and keep it there. And so I'm just looking, what I'm doing is I'm looking at my flat and where my bit is. And if you guys can probably see, like, this is clearly not centered, right? So neither is this over here. So I need to find somewhere in the middle and be on that flat. So I like where that's at. I'm gonna make sure I'm still at the widest point. Commit to the bit, as they say. Thank you. So I'll lock that in. I've locked everything in on these rods. I think I like it. So if you don't have to, don't bring this back up, but you could. I'll put that turret in so my plunge depth is set. And is that it? I think that's it. I think I'm ready. Now I put it in. And again, you can't really put dust in here because we just don't have enough room. And even if we had enough room while we were plunging, you wouldn't be able to see where the bit is. So just stand, if I plunge and then stand right here, I will absolutely get blasted with dust. So kind of what the best view is about here. And when you start, it looks like you're not going to be able to see where the shoulder is, but I guarantee you're going to see right where that shaft of the router bit is. You'll be able to know when to stop. And if you stop a half inch early, that's fine. You have a little more chisel work to do. It's not a big deal. Okay. Turn it off. I can't pull it up. It's a dovetail. I gotta slide it out. There we go. Nice, perfect dovetail. Right there. Boom, boom. We got our walls. I probably could have gone a little closer. That's okay. You can right now go in there and go a little deeper if you wanted. It wouldn't harm anything. Or you could say, well, that's close enough. I don't want to do something foolish. Let's do something foolish.
Remember that dovetail, it's cutting beyond the shaft. So
Yeah, you don't want to go right to your shoulder because you're going to start undercutting where that is. Yeah, wherever you see it. So, and I'll turn it on out here, bring it back in. So I'm not turning it on while it's inside. Okay, I like it.
We needed a funny moment, so you could have just put it in there and started it up.
Okay, so at this point, if someone is in line waiting for this setup, then you're just going to want to route all three and move on. If you got the time, this jig is also a great spot to do some chisel work and cleanup. So I don't have a mallet with me right now, but you would sort of go right to that shoulder, break those fibers right here, pare that down, use the flat as my reference and start paring that material away. All right, so breaking it here and then paring away so I can clean that flat all the way up to my shoulder line. Then I can use something more narrow than that opening of my dovetail bit and start breaking those fibers away just like we do with other dovetails. And ride the wall of that dovetail and keep cleaning, clean that up all the way back. If you're worried about, people get worried about using this dovetail bit all at once. I mean, you heard it's a big cut for that bit, but it can do it, even if it's older. You just have to go slow, keep it held down, take your time, right? The more people use it, the slower you're gonna need to go, right? So if you do this in 3 weeks, keep that in mind, okay? And what you can do is, if you're really worried about it, is you can use a straight cutter or some sort of spiral cutter, and you sort of relieve the channel first with that. This would have to be more narrow than whatever the most narrow part of your dovetail bit is. Then you can come through with that final dovetail bit. You're dealing with another router and switching things out, and you don't need to with a nice clean bit. Okay. So then I would turn it to my next index. This router, that router, I'm not going to do it. You guys get the idea, but you could see how fast that would be to, you really pull this out, pull it here. Clamp it down and start routing. So really quick. All the setup was on that first one. Really consistent. Real nice. So now I've routed all 3 of my dovetail channels, and they look beautiful on the pine table. And I'm ready to start sizing my leg at the router table right here.